All right, well, thank you for coming today, this evening. My name is Nicholas Hartlep, and it's been a pleasure getting to see Prairie View. You have a beautiful campus, brilliant students. And so tonight, what I have planned is to just go over a few slides to share this book here. So this book, as you know or may not know, is in the series that one of your professors started. So I'll get to that. I'm coming to you as a teacher educator, so I'm at Berea College where I chair the Ed Studies department. At Berea College, we're a unique institution. We're the first interracial coeducational college of the South. And that's important for you to know because equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging is central to my professional life, but also my personal life. I've worked at different institutions, and the type of institution you work at as a professor, to me, is important because values, morals, underpinnings that undergird the work, it's hard to work in a space that you don't agree with the politics on your campus, right? So let's dive right in. Today, I just used the title from the book, Racial Battle Fatigue in Faculty, Perspectives and Lessons from Higher Education. So, like I said, this book is the first in a book series. The book series is Diverse Faculty in the Academy. The series editor is Dr. Fred Bonner, and I co-edited this book with a colleague, Daisy Ball. Daisy Ball is a sociologist at Roanoke College in Roanoke, Virginia, and she is a white woman, cisgendered, heterosexual, married, has 1 or 2 children, and I'll talk to you a little bit of how she comes to this work and how I've come to partner with her for this volume. So, first off, what is this book about? Well, Racial Battle Fatigue in Faculty examines the challenges faced by diverse faculty members in colleges and universities, highlighting the experiences of faculty of color, including African American, Asian American, Hispanic American, and indigenous populations in higher education across a range of institutional types. Chapter authors employ an autoethnographic approach to telling their stories, okay? Chapters illustrate on-the-ground experiences, elucidating the struggles and triumphs of faculty of color as they navigate the historically white setting of higher education and provide actionable strategies to help faculty and administrators combat these issues. Okay, so the focus is stories, autoethnographic stories of diverse BIPOC faculty as they relate to experiencing racial battle fatigue. And I'll define racial battle fatigue for everyone this evening. This book gives voice to faculty struggles and arms graduate students, doc students, y'all in the room, faculty and administrators committed to diversity in higher education, with the specific tools needed to reduce racial battle fatigue and making lasting, impactful change. First off, how is this book structured? Structure is really important to me, right, when you read a book. Well, there are 5 parts, and each part focuses on a different population. The first part looks at the racialized experiences of African Americans in U.S. higher education. The second part looks at Asian Americans in U.S. higher education, their racialized experiences. Part 3 is Latinx racialized experiences in higher education. Part 4, Native Americans in U.S. higher education. Now, this last part is really interesting because it looks at the experiences of people of color in diversity-related faculty, fellow positions, and non-tenure track positions. So parts 1, 2, 3, and 4, you can think of it as looking at different racial, ethnic groups, indigeneity groups, but within the frame of, teaching-focused institutions, research-focused institutions. But that last part is really important because depending, you might do a postdoc, right, when you're graduating from Prairie View with your doctorate. You might find a diversity fellowship, and we need to kind of document their experiences, those folks' experiences as well, which we do in the book. So first off, you might be asking, what is racial battle fatigue? Well, racial battle fatigue refers to the stress and strain members of racially marginalized populations experience, tensions which emanate from coping with and fighting against the racism here on colleges and university campuses. Now that work comes from William Smith at Utah, but it also comes from Chester Pierce before him. While colleges and universities are often thought of progressive, forward-thinking institutions, they are not immune from this phenomenon, for they came of age during eras of white domination. Okay, so that's a little context of what it is, but let's probe a little deeper. Racial battle fatigue is not just a theoretical creation, right? It is something that may cause anger, might cause elevated heart rates, frustration, high blood pressure. So it affects you physiologically, your health, right? Headaches, hopelessness, paranoia, fear, hypervigilance, shock, disappointment, constant worry, anxiety. Now this is over and above what just the general population experiences, right? We know that many people have depression and anxiety. Racial battle fatigue is heightened based on racism. So let me tell you a little bit about where this book emanated from. I was not at Berea College when I wrote this or edited this book. I was at a minority serving institution. It was an Anna Peasy Metropolitan State University in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I had a really interesting, a racist experience with the union. So Minnesota is a very progressive state. It is highly unionized. And, this is where I think many of us in the room as scholars, we have personal experiences and we have to go back to the literature. I'm experiencing this, what does the literature say? And I came up with this research by Hollis in 2016. And they wrote, Hollis in 2016 considered a sample of 142 community colleges through a correlation analysis to reveal that 67% of those who belong to unions are subject to workplace bullying. Okay? Now listen to this. 3% higher than the general population reporting their experiences in relationship to workplace bullying at community colleges. So that's interesting, but the next line's even more fascinating. Further, 76% of people of color in unions also are affected by workplace bullying in community colleges. In contrast, 68% of people of color not in unions are affected by bullying. What that tells us is that unions for people of color, they're places and spaces where they experience bullying. Well, I would say that bullying, if you're a person of color and you're being bullied at work, that might cause racial battle fatigue. The tragic irony of a white union abiding by such orthodoxy and dogma is similar to the pigs in George Orwell's Animal Farm, who proclaim all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. So the MSI that I worked at, they can support and serve students of color, and they do. HBCUs, tribal colleges, they do. They serve their populations well. Yet at times, though, they might not be serving their faculty of color or their Native American faculty well. Something must be done. So the focus of the book is about faculty experiences, not student experiences. Now, there are books on student experiences. More books need to be written about student experiences. But our book here looks at faculty experiences. So I shared a little bit about my context. Let's talk a little bit about Daisy's context. So Daisy, she writes in the beginning of the book that, hey, I don't know what racial battle fatigue feels like. I haven't had it as an experience. But as a woman, I have experienced sexism. I've experienced misogyny. I've experienced sexual harassment, right? And this was really fascinating, and why I very much enjoy my colleague Daisy Ball. She's just very sharp, and she shared this. It's crazy. I need to read it verbatim. This is Daisy's words, not mine. While writing this introduction, a job ad came to my attention. The Department of Political Science at Acme University, we don't identify the university, we call it Acme, invites applications for a part-time visiting lecturer, the year 2019-2020, in the area of racial and ethnic politics to begin September 4th, 2019. Teaching responsibilities will also include the Introduction to American Politics course. This is a part-time, non-benefited contract position. This one-year appointment could be extended. Given how few people of color we have on our faculty, we are especially interested in selecting this person from a diverse applicant pool. In many ways, this ad exemplifies the central problems discussed in this book. Namely, faculty of color are being targeted for a non-benefited contract position so as to alleviate the university's problem of lack of diversity. Okay? When she shared that with me, I said, oh my goodness, I was brokenhearted. The fact that a job ad uses that language, we need to correct that. Whoever put that ad out needs some, I would say, not even sensitivity training. They need real in-depth training, some strategies that are shared in this book. So what I've done now, and I'll go through these quickly because I want to engage in a conversation at the end. I just took a few chapters out of the book, no rhyme or reason per se, and I want to share out a little bit. I also think it's important to share their story, but also share, Anita's not here, but I got a picture, so you can, this is Anita, and it kind of gives a little bit more of a feel for the person's voice, okay? So Anita, she wrote her chapter, and her chapter was titled, When You Name a Problem, You Become the Problem. Encountering Whiteness at a Small Liberal Arts College as a South Asian American tenured professor. So start putting yourself in the position. I know many of us in this space this evening, you're doc students, you're aspiring to be in the academy. You might work at a liberal arts college. You might not be at a research college or university, right? Okay. So Anita tells of her experience at a small Midwestern liberal arts college where she published a blog with a colleague. And that blog just told their experiences. They're like, hey, we have this going on campus. We've experienced this. And when they did that, there was a lot of blowback and pushback. That's the title. When you start naming problems, when you bring that to the college's attention, you immediately get pegged. Well, Anita, why are you bringing this up? That's not really, before you, we weren't having this problem. You're saying that we're all bad, but look at this, right? Defensiveness, right? That's at the individual and institutional level, right? That's a really, when you become a professor, you'll immediately see that. no matter where you're at, as BIPOC faculty, you experience that. And so her story is really interesting, given the context, and she was tenured too. She talks about, well, now that I'm tenured, I feel a little bit more safe that I can share this. Chapter 7, Takumi. His chapter was titled, Ignored, Pacified, and Deflected. Racial Battle Fatigue for an Asian American Non-Tenured Professor. So here you have an example. He's not tenured. Making matters worse, he was, at the time of writing it, in a kind of like this fixed term position. So he's very vulnerable. It's long, but I want to read this to you. And I do this because I'm more thoughtful if I can read their words, so I can get it right. So Takumi writes, interacting with leadership. I have faced personal battles with school leadership that are arguably tied to my racial identity, Asian American, even if not explicitly named. For example, a former white female school director issued a charge to faculty to increase grant activity in a school-wide meeting. Prior to the director's arrival, I had received a major grant award for over $1 million as a co-principal investigator. I informed the internal grant office and the director of my intent to apply for a new grant and provided my letter of intent. But the newly installed director actively tried to disqualify me from applying because I'm not a tenure-track faculty member. I made a second request for support from the director after the request with the letter of intent when it went unanswered, and finally I received a response back from her stating the following, and I quote, I have looked over the LOI, the letter of intent, you gave me, plus the RFP, the request for a proposal. I am wondering if you have talked with anyone at William T. Grant about your eligibility. Specifically, the requirements indicate that you must be in a career ladder position, which they further describe as meaning a tenure track position. If you're in the university world, if you have something from them indicating that they would consider you eligible, please forward it to me and attach it to your LOI. But my interpretation of the requirements and their description of the selection criteria on pages 12 through 14 of the RFP, request for proposals, relative to supporting individuals in research positions would be that you don't qualify. Now here's the thing. In Takumi's chapter, he goes on to unpack that he had talked to William T. Grant, and he was in fact eligible. And this is the incredible thing of white supremacy, is that this school director thought it be better that Takumi, mind you, he already secured $1 million, not even help the institution apply for whatever proposal he had in mind. That goes against the interest of the university in the sense of that those funds, but it doesn't go against the interest of protecting a historically white space. And so you can see the vulnerability that Takumi had to be faced with. Chapter 13, Jameson Lopez, his chapter was entitled Recommendations to Support Indigenous Faculty. Dr. Lopez, in his chapter, writes about how central family is to him as a human being. And he talks about the importance of braiding family and the profession, that he cannot detach from his family when he's at the University of Arizona. And so I want us to think through his storytelling, perhaps that work-life balance is a construct that is problematic in and of itself. Because to separate your work from your life, right? Some people, many people, their work is their life, and their life is their work. Furthermore, when you think about spaces at universities, how often do you see, and if you do see it, I applaud it, but how often do you see faculty bringing in children, bringing in family members, that they're invited and that they can be who they are fully. And that's important. That's very important. And that's something that, as a department chair, I try to cultivate at my campus. It can go from, do you have diaper changing stations in the male bathrooms and the female bathrooms, all your bathrooms? Do you have spaces for breastfeeding? Do you have, we need to make sure that we have this so folks can be comfortable. Our young fathers and mothers, are they given preference to when they can schedule their classes to teach because they have childcare needs? What is the policy when they have a sick child? Can they do Zoom? These are very commonsensical things, but Lopez does a brilliant job talking about his life as a young Native boy and his father and mother, how they raised him. And now he is a father to children and also a professor. Chapter 14, if you do get the book, powerful. Paula Buchanan. I believe she is now at Columbia in some role, but her chapter is The Convenient Invisible Token Diversity Hire, a Black Woman's Experience in Academia. And her counter narrative, she doesn't hold back. And I want to share a little bit of the text and then tell you one nugget that she shares that really, it broke my heart. First, let's share the text. Invite the entire person to your academic institution. This is her recommendation. As previously noted, I considered code switching my natural black hair into a form that mimicked white standards of beauty to get my job as a faculty member. If I had decided to change who I am by changing my hair, I would not have brought my entire self to my job. Unfortunately, these are the issues that Black faculty must deal with if we decide to work for predominantly white institutions that want us to just bring the thing we ask you for and leave the rest at home. Citing Brown 2019. Empower us to be who we are instead of who you think we are. To increase equity and inclusion beyond the basic need for diversity, you must invite the entire whole person to be a part of your team, not just the part of the person of color that is useful to you. And what broke my heart is she tells this story where at the time she was recently hired, newly hired, and when she went up, it was in the evening, she forgot some books or something in her office. And she came up to her office, and there was a custodian, a white female custodian staff member cleaning offices. And the custodian kind of said to her, "Who are you?" And Paula said, "I'm Miss Buchanan. See the nameplate? I'm here. I forgot some things in my office." And she kind of did a double take. She's like, "No, this isn't your office." And they had this very painful exchange. And it got her very upset, right? And to me, that interaction was one that, yes, I believe it. It's credible. But I hadn't read it in literature, right? So the more we tell our stories, we can share these experiences in these different spaces, right? I've written about a story where my dean didn't know my name. My white dean didn't know my name. And I was with my children at Dairy Queen. And I could tell noticeably he was kind of getting embarrassed. But that was a racial battle fatigue experience for me because I was with my babies and my wife. And my supervisor doesn't know my name. And so the more we publish, the more we tell these stories, I think the more value there are in that. Okay, we're wrapping it up. Overall, when you look at the chapters within that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-part frame that I shared, there were 5 themes. First were many of the stories dealt with hiring experiences. I already told you who this book was for. This is for grad students, it's for, right, faculty, folks who hire. If you're a hiring authority, dean, assistant, right? It's important for us to know. So if you're a grad student and you're applying, you should read these chapters because you're going to get some knowledge. The other theme was white epistemology and alternative ways of knowing and being, right? Is that these spaces have white norms and values. And that was across spaces, that was across institution type, right? So it's not just research intensive institutions. It can be liberal arts intensive. It can even be, in the case that I opened tonight with, a minority serving institution, right? Third is a sense of belonging or not belonging, okay? Being invisibilized, as Takumi, being deflected, being pacified, right? You're a pet until you're a threat, right? Be small, don't shine, don't be excellent because you will offend whiteness. If you overpublish, right, if you're doing more than a full professor as an assistant professor, watch out. They're coming for you. Experiencing microaggressions or macroaggressions. And lastly, that invisibility or being ignored. And so when you think of those themes, at the epicenter, we put invisibility, and on the outside, all of that is subsumed by white frames, the white gaze, white epistemology, right? The book is not just horrific stories, though. Because while that might be cathartic for BIPOC communities, we wanted to share actionable strategies. Like, if then, so what? What do we do? What's the next action item? And so I just picked a few, but each chapter ends with giving strategies. Some that came to me was chapter 3, the author shared that we should have mandatory trainings on racial microaggressions. If you don't know what racial microaggressions are, they're these common, everyday, normal interactions that may be unintentional, but they result in feeling like, oh, right, that was a jab. It's almost like this idea of 1,000 paper cuts, right? We could create a culture where academic work and personal life is braided. The notion of work-life balance, right? And I saw that during COVID. When COVID happened, a lot of times people were working at home. And then as society opened back up, there was some resistance and hesitancy to go back. Now, some people don't like to be at home, but that ability to work from home, some people really like that. They were closer to their family members, right? And so that's very interesting. Workplace policies is very important, right? Institutions of higher education need to decolonize their curricula, and so that's an actionable strategy. They can start looking at their curriculum. I work at Prairie College. We are a liberal arts college, so we don't have any graduate programs. And part of the liberal arts experience is that they have a general core curriculum. And we're revising our curriculum right now. And we're at that moment of we're like, what is important for us to look at, right? And part of that is, who are we reading, right? Cite black women, right? Cite black folk, right? That whole movement we need to be aware of. And then lastly, institutions of higher education ought to empower BIPOC faculty, like Paula said, to be who they are instead of who they think they are or who should they be, right? So I think we're best at our craft when we are fully present, when we can be who we are, right? And that unfortunately isn't the norm in higher education.